Everyone welcome Mr. Stephen Gordon.
Thank you, Yannick. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
It's a good day here, and I want to congratulate Yannick for putting this together. It's a wonderful initiative, and I hope you all continue to support her. Let's teach JA.org to support this initiative so that it can grow from strength to strength and from year to year. She gave me a call and invited me to come out and support, and whenever I hear about initiatives like this that are community-based, and especially that are being driven by members of that community, that are non-political, non-religious, but really just about us as a family, as a people, as a race, as the sons and daughters of Africa, as the children of Garvey, who is our first national hero. I make it a point to come out and support. If you haven't heard, the president of Ghana is visiting the island this weekend, which is very significant. If you know anything about Ghana, you know it's one of the countries that Marcus Garvey had a very profound effect on. In fact, if you look at their flag, which is the red, yellow, and green flag, it has a black star in the middle, and that black star is significant because it represents Marcus Garvey. In particular, it represents the Black Star Line, which was a shipping company that Garvey founded and initiated in June of 1919. So you know what that makes this month? The centenary of the Black Star Line. The Black Star Line was incorporated in the United States, in the state of Delaware, on June 27, 1919. So we are actually celebrating the centennial of this initiative. And more than it just being ships that were meant to take African descendants back to Africa, because that was largely propaganda. People branded the Garvey movement as the Back to Africa movement because they thought the idea was to have these ships that would take all the black people from America and the Americas back to Africa. But that was never really the purpose of the Black Star Line. The Black Star Line was meant as a major economical initiative, an entrepreneurial initiative. In fact, it was the first company that black people were able to buy shares in for themselves. Only black people could buy shares in the Black Star Line. And it was meant to initiate, and it was meant to stimulate trade amongst Africans all over the globe. So Garvey's idea was never that black people must get up and leave and go back to Africa, but that we should focus our economic power, our social and political power on creating in Africa an empire that was strong enough to lend its protection and to lend its assistance and its support to Africans wherever they are in the world. And if you look now in the 21st century, because we're talking about something that was started 100 years ago, you can see what the Chinese have been able to accomplish with the same sort of initiative. You have Chinese people all over the world, but over the centuries, they've always focused their economic and social networking powers on their homeland. They bring goods from China, they trade Chinese goods all over the world, money goes back to China, and you're able to see how China has now become a superpower, an empire that is able to lend its influence to its citizens and to the countries that its citizens are domiciled in. So all the work you see going on in Jamaica now, a lot of Chinese support, a lot of Chinese money, and it's really because the Chinese have had a foothold in Jamaica from as early as the 19th century. So this was Garvey's idea, for us as black people to realize that we have an inherent right to possess ourselves of Africa because it is the land of our ancestors, it is the land from which our ancestors were taken, and that if we were able to work together and focus our strengths collectively all over the world to make Africa strong and powerful, then it would make us a force to be reckoned with in the world. Now, this was Garvey's dream 100 years ago. And the reason why myself and other people still exist and are still working within the framework of Garvey's legacy is because we have not accomplished those dreams as yet. We're closer, but still too far away. Ms. Morgan spoke about an educational initiative, and that is a particular reason why I am throwing my support behind her. One of the things we've been working on for the past decade or so is to initiate the teaching of Garveyism in the schools. And I know a lot of people have spoken about it, a lot of politicians have brought it up, but if we're going to be serious about accomplishing it, as we have said for the past 10 years, we cannot ask teachers to teach something that they themselves haven't learned. So that initiative has to begin in the teacher training institutions, and bigger than that, it also needs to begin at the community level. We have to change the culture of how we educate, and by extension indoctrinate our children and the young ones like yourself sitting in front of me. There are too many colonial, corruptive, and enslaving mental concepts that we are passing on from one generation to the other. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I couldn't say something like you're black like and ask you if you ever heard that. Ask the children if they've heard that. You ever heard somebody say you're black like? Yes. You see the point I'm making? I used to hear these things when I was young too. You used to hear them. Your grandparents used to hear them. We used to say them. And we're continuing to pass that on from generation to generation, because if we weren't, these young people would be looking at me like, what are you talking about? Now consider this. Have you ever heard a white person tell another white person you're white like? Huh? They don't project those things as insults onto themselves. So when Marcus Garvey said we have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, it's a very serious point he's making, because we have adopted the attitude of our colonizers. And so we have issues in our society still today, like our young people bleaching, our young people not being comfortable with their African identity. We have hundreds of people who line up out front the US Embassy and the UK High Commission every day to beg a visa to go there. And we have very few Jamaicans who grow up with a concept in their mind that they would like to go to Africa, that they would like to seek their fortune in Africa, that they would like to build up Africa. No, we continue to go to the land of our colonizers and our enslavers, and we continue to build them up. We continue to strengthen their empire, while we neglect what is our birthright coming down from our ancestors from thousands of years. And we can't change that until we change the mental issues. We address those and we change the concept we have of ourselves as Africans, and the concept we have of Africa itself as our homeland. So one of the initiatives we have started in order to accomplish that is something that we call the Garvey ABCs. Now think about it. The ABCs is something that you teach your children as soon as they're learning to talk. You want to teach them the ABCs, because you want to make sure they can read and that they can write and that they have the fundamental foundations they need to get an education that will propel them in life. Everybody here know the ABCs? You learned your ABCs, children? Yeah, I used to learn to know ABCD, and we sing it in songs, and we give them books, A's for apple and B's for banana, and we invest in that. We covet those things that we believe will advance us in our society and in the world around us according to the culture and the mood that is contemporary to the day that we live in. But we have a hand and we have a mind that we can put towards changing that. So one of the things we have been teaching children at the Heidel group of schools and everywhere that I can is something we call the Garvey ABCs. And we have them memorize this, we have them internalize it, hoping that as they grow, just as we memorize and internalize the ABCs, it will have an influence on how they think, how they perceive themselves, and how they interact with the world around them. And the idea came to me, when my own grandmother turned 99. She lived a very long time. She died when she was 100 years old. But at the age of 99, she began to she couldn't remember all the names of her grandchildren. She had a lot of grandchildren, so you have to forgive her. She would look at you and you know that she recognized you, but it wasn't easy for her to just pull your name out of her mind. But I noticed at the age of 99, she could still quote a Bible verse, and the chapter, and what part of the Bible it comes from, because my grandmother grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. She grew us all up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And there's a thing that she used to do from she was a child. They called it memory gems. So she would study these memory verses to go to church. And at 99, even though she couldn't remember the name of some of her grandchildren, she remembered these memory verses that she learned when she was 4 years old and 5 years old and 6 and 7 and 8. And I thought to myself, wow. And Jamaica is a very Christian country. And the older you get is the more you draw back to those things that you learned in your childhood, because they set a foundation in the development of the way that you think. So I said to myself, why not take the lessons and the teachings and the philosophies of Marcus Garvey and create memory gems that we teach our children from the age as soon as they are able to talk. So that when they're 99 and 100, even when they can't remember their own name, they will remember these lessons. We call it the Garvey ABCs, and it's taken from the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. Quotations from speeches that he made or articles he may have written in his newspapers, projecting his concept of Pan-Africanism and what we call today, now that he has left us in the flesh, Garveyism. And it starts with A, of course, which stands for Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. That's the first letter, A. Because it's important that as children, we identify with Africa from a very early age, and we identify and recognize the fact that we are Africans, regardless of whether we're born in Jamaica, England, New York, wherever you are. Peter Tosh said it best: no matter where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you are an African. So B stands for a man's bread and butter is only ensured when he works for it. Because C states that if you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life, but with confidence you have won even before you have started. D, the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization. Not bombs and guns and weapons of mass destruction, but our own lack of unity in addressing our issues together collectively. And we can't be afraid, because E, men who are in earnest are not afraid of consequences. F, we must emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, because none but ourselves can free our minds. G states that we Negroes believe in the God of Ethiopia, the everlasting God, the one God of all the ages, but as black people we must worship our deities through our own spectacles as Ethiopians, as Africans, as black people. It means that if you're a black child, don't send your children to a church where they must look up on a picture that they tell them is Jesus and it don't look like them. It looks like Michelangelo uncle, because that is the foundation of instilling white supremacy in their mind. If they can't identify God within their own skins, then you are allowing alien cultures to forever dominate them. They will go to America and see Jesus walking on the road, but they can't see him walking on the road in their own community. H, history is the landmark by which we are directed into the true course of life. I, never go down in intelligence to those who are below you, but if possible, help to lift them up. I see too many artists singing songs and children dancing and prancing to it, and when I listen to the lyrics, it's rubbish. It's garbage. And I wonder how these artists become so prominent, so iconic, so influential over my young children when they are talking garbage. So I teach my son, listen, analyze everything you hear with your own intelligence. If it is something that is lifting you up, embrace it. If it's something that you can identify don't make sense, never go down in intelligence to those who are below you. J, if we must have justice, Garvey says, we must be strong. If we must be strong, we must come together. If we are to come together, we can only do so through the system of organization. Hence, he created the UNIA as a global Pan-African confraternity to bring black people together as brothers and sisters. Because that's what's lacking in our community. A young black man can't shoot another black man if when he looks at that black man, he sees himself, he sees his brother. He's not going to rape a black woman if he looks at that woman and sees his mother and sees his sister. I've never heard of a Chinese man killing another Chinese man in Jamaica. I'm not saying it don't happen, I just don't hear about it. I certainly have never seen white Jamaicans in the news for killing themselves. When's the last time you heard an Indian man shoot up an ex-house of Indian people and go in there and rape the Indian picnic them? I've never heard it. So why every day when I look at the images and the news that is bombarding me, it is my people killing themselves? K. Marcus Garvey asks, where is the black man's king? Which would say, where's his queen too? Where is his army? Where is his navy? Where is his government? Where is his men of big affairs? Garvey said, when I could not find them, I decided I must help to create them. And that's what this initiative is about. Yannick has identified something lacking within these communities. She didn't cry about it. She said, let us address it. If it is not there, let us build it. If you build it, they will come. That's leadership. L. Marcus Garvey says leadership means everything. Pain, blood, and death. Because given our particular history, all our leaders have come through that system where leadership required great sacrifice for the African, from the African who fought against enslavers on the continent, to the ones who died on the slave ships, to the ones who fought on the plantations, to the ones who fought in the mountains, to the ones who were sacrificed like Tachi and others, so that we as a generation could be here today, not as slaves, but as the children of Africa. M stands for man, know thyself. It is an ancient inscription on the walls of the pyramids that were built not by aliens and not by Europeans, but by your very own ancestors. And for too long there's been a conspiracy to separate you from your true history and from your true identity. When you go to church, they tell you that Pharaoh is a bad man. They didn't tell you that Pharaoh looks like you, that his hair was locked like mine. They didn't tell you that it was Africans who invented reading and writing. In fact, one time they made it illegal for your own ancestors to learn to read or write. We created reading and writing in Egypt. We built the first civilization. We charted the stars. We created astronomy. We did the first medical surgeries. The foundation of the world is in Africa, and it was built by your great, 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 great to the exponential grandmother and grandfather. We built the pyramids before there were skyscrapers in New York. Engineers cannot replicate what Africans did thousands of years ago. Yet they kidnapped millions of our ancestors from Africa under the guise that we were uncivilized and uneducated. It is the biggest lie that they've told our parents, and they continue to tell it to your children. If you don't stop it, if you don't interrupt it, it will continue. They make TV shows that show some white people wearing something on their heads, say them are Egyptian. Where is Egypt? In what continent? So how the Egyptians that you see on TV that they portray don't look like Africans? And we just accept that. Napoleon shot the nose off of the Sphinx because it was a big, broad African nose. And he was uncomfortable with the fact that while they had Africans in slavery in places like Haiti and Guadeloupe, here stood a landmark and a testimony to the greatness of the black man that refuted the propaganda that they were feeding us. That we come from a place where we live in trees like monkeys. Lies. Look at the pyramids in Sudan. They're not just in Egypt. We built pyramids in Peru. We built pyramids in China. Africans populated the world. How come they've hidden that from our history book? Africans crossed the Atlantic in 1200 AD, 250 plus years before an Italian sailed under a Spanish flag by the name of Christopher Columbus. But your history books don't tell you that. An African king by the name of Abu Bakr II, Emperor of Mali, led an expedition across the Atlantic with 200 ships. 200 ships. Columbus only came with 4. We arrived before them. And I am a Negro, Marcus Garvey says, and I make absolutely no apology for being a Negro. Accept your race. For too long we run away from who we are. Women, for too long you straighten your hair to look like Europeans. Kids now bleaching out their skin because they think to be lighter makes their future brighter. These are lies. This is miseducation and propaganda designed for us to internalize a sense of self-hate and self-loathing. From the white Jesus come right up to the false hair. There's a reason. How come you don't see Chinese people putting on black afro wigs and walking around? Like this is their style. This is the normal way to be. You don't see white people doing that either. You know how ridiculous it looks for black people to be doing everything to try to be something that we're not, and we normalize it. We think it's normal. Girls grow up, they can't wait to cream their hair. I grew with 2 sisters, you know. My mother had a rule, you have to reach a certain place in high school before you cream your hair. But yet it's still cream. Now we know years later of the damage that those chemicals and things have done to our skin and done to our bodies, but yet we're still doing it because we're addicted to white supremacy. That's how lost we are. O stands for one, as in one God, one aim, one destiny. The motto of the organization Garvey gave us. We have to be of one mind, one heart, and show one love to each other. P, we need power, because the only protection against injustice in man is power, physical, scientific, and financial. Don't get it wrong. Q, question. The question often asked is, what does it take to liberate a people and free a continent? Garvey said if it requires education, if it requires manpower, or even if it requires blood, the 1 billion Negroes of the world have it. R, respect. A race without authority and power is a race without respect. If we have to beg other nations for our own survival, if we have to beg other nations to build our nation, you really believe they respect us in the world? You know how many countries flying to this country, yet if you want to go to them country, I'm embarrassed to go to the US Embassy sometimes. I hate it. I just don't even like how they treat my people in my own country. A race without authority and power is a race without respect. We have to reclaim our authority. We have to assert our power. S, let Africa be your shining star. Garvey says, your star of victory, T, black man, black woman, what is in thy bosom? Is it talent for something? Pluck it out and let us have it. What you are good at, put it to the benefit of your family, of your community, of your race, of your nation. And let us advance together. You up, ye mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. But where the people lack vision, the people will perish. W is for the world, because Garvey says, I know no boundary where the Negro is concerned. The whole world is my province until Africa is free. X was a difficult one. So don't mind the E, but we say X stands for exploitation. And Garvey once wrote, should we not turn our eyes to Africa, our ancestral homeland, and free it from the thraldom of alien exploitation and oppression? I've been to Africa 3 times so far in my life. Once east, once south, and back again to east and central. Every time I travel to Africa, not mentioning the fact that I have to fly to a white people's country to get there and pay them, whether it's transit visa. Every time I fly to Africa, the flights that I am on are filled with Europeans. British, German, Italians. When I get to talking to them, I'm like, what are you guys going to Africa for? They're all involved in business in Africa. Major businesses. Security, energy, telecommunications. It seems the whole world is making money in Africa, except the Africans who were stolen away. And that was part of my own enlightenment. Africa is the breadbasket of the world. So you know, Jamaicans are, we're very cultural, yes. But we're a bottom line people too. We're survivors, as Bob Marley said, the black survivors. And that means we gotta eat and we gotta be able to feed our family. So I'm not appealing to Jamaicans simply on some sentimental level of you must love Marcus Garvey and go to Africa. I'm telling you that if you're hip to the way the economies and financial powers are moving in the world, you would be a fool to turn a blind eye to Africa. Because they're all making millions and billions there. You think little goods you bringing in from China and trading on the street is going to make you a millionaire? The way they are exploiting minerals and resources out of Africa, if it was really wise, you'd have gone to Africa from yesterday. You wouldn't be wasting time waiting on an American visa and a UK visa thinking that's where money is made. Because when you go to their countries, you find that they're going to Africa. That's where they're making their money. So how long is it going to take us to wake up to that? Forget the fact that Garvey says you have an obligation simply from the fact that you're descended from Africans who were stolen. And that is the worst story to tell somebody. Imagine a man come and take you out of your mother's house, carry you somewhere else. Hundreds of years later, you come back to your mother's house and you're scorning it. You don't even want to be there. You look at your very mother, you don't even recognize her as your mother. Say, who's this dirty woman? And you're hugging up this white man who raised you up like daddy, the same very one that stole you from your mother's house and brutalized your mother. It would break your mother's heart. I know as a child somebody kidnapped my child at a young age, and years later I see my child hugging up that person, calling them daddy and looking at me like I'm some dirty scoundrel. As my grandmother would say, if my grandfather was to come back and not find yam on him dinner plate, he would have just dead back. Think about it. That's the story of Africans. So when we turn to Africa and we look with scorn like I'm not African, and we're quick to say that I'm not African, we don't know about Africa. You're disrespecting the very reason you have to live. Because if it was not for an African ancestor who fought for the right to live on, who held on to that breath rather than chuck over the slave ship, or rather than blow himself up in the gunpowder house. He stayed alive, and it's only because he stayed alive that you're alive. And when you think he stayed alive, or you think he was saying, boy, one day my children will be proud to be Jamaicans and they will never want to go back home. The African who came over on the ship thought of nothing else except going back home. How do I know? Because I know if a man kidnapped me right now, what else am I thinking about except my wife and my pick to them? And how I'm going to get back to them. You think I'm running ahead like, woo, brand new life. Reggae music and all. Beaches, woo. No. That's what they were thinking. And they died holding on to that dream of a return. So as their children's children, we have an obligation and a duty to fulfill that hope. Otherwise, we forfeit our right to live. We are alive to fulfill their dreams. We are alive to accomplish what they could not. And for too long, we've been oblivious to that. Y is for your, not Y-O-U-R, but Y-O-R-E. Garvey says, Negroes, be as proud of your race today as your fathers were in the days of yore. We had a beautiful history, and we shall create another in the future when we come to know ourselves. Z is for Zambezi. There's a poem Marcus Garvey writes. It says, from Angola to Zimbabwe. Get it? A to Z. Angola is at the top of the African continent. Zimbabwe is at the bottom. From Angola to Zimbabwe, and from Nile, which is the longest river in East Africa, North Africa, to Zambezi, the longest river in South Africa. Hail, united Africa, mighty thou shalt ever be, his poem says. And I want to leave that with you all today. The Garvey ABCs right up to Z. And I hope that you will think on these things in a new way of identifying not only who you are as an African, but your purpose as an African in the world today, and your obligation to fulfill an ancient duty and an ancient promise that goes back 8 and 9 generations to that African who was on a slave ship, whose genes now run through your blood. Don't forget where you're coming from, but bigger than that, understand where it is we need to go. Africa for the Africans, at home and abroad, one God, one aim, one destiny. Thank you.